Hey guys, it's Nathan and welcome to Hale. So I'm really excited about this video. This is a new series that I would like to start doing on my channel where every month I talk about the different criterions that I have seen from the Criterion Collection. This will include both first-time watches and re-watches. But oddly enough, all the criterions I want to talk about in this video are first-time watches, which is kind of exciting. But before I get started on that, just wanted to welcome you to the channel. If you're new, I talk about criterions, black and white movies, Disney movies, pretty much anything movies, as well as laundry tutorials. So if you like any of those things, make sure to hit the subscribe button so that you can check out more of my videos. So I'll just go in order of the criterions that I watched. At the beginning of the month, I checked out the movie His Girl Friday, directed by Howard Hawks. This movie stars Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell. They play a couple who has recently divorced. She has moved on and found a new lover. However, he is still attached to her. They're both news reporters. There's a juicy story going on, and so he tries to convince her to stay in town long enough to get the scoop on this juicy story. This was a fun movie. It didn't quite meet my expectations. I didn't dislike it at all, but I don't know, it just wasn't as good as I thought it would be. But Cary Grant's character was very funny. Rosalind Russell's character was a go-getter, go her. And it was just a cute movie that is harmless, honestly. Now I'm slowly trying to watch all of Wes Anderson's filmography. He's a director that I really like, and so I think it would be cool to check out all of his movies. So this month I watched the movie The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, and I really liked it. It was quirky, it was colorful, it was unique. I just described every Wes Anderson movie. There were a few things that I liked particularly about Life Aquatic, and that was the underwater scenes. So any scenes where they're in the scuba suits and they're swimming underwater, I just thought were really cool to watch. I also really liked the set design, and that's usually the case with Wes Anderson movies. He gives you set designs that are very creative, and not only creative, but multi-level. And what I mean by that is you can see what's going on in multiple rooms at the same time. And I just kind of think that's cool in movies when they do that. I also really liked Owen Wilson. I mean, honestly, I like Owen Wilson in anything that he does. I loved him in Bottle Rocket, loved him in this movie. I love him in pretty much any movie that I watch with him. And I really like Bill Murray too. I think the biggest con to this movie is that the ending kind of drags on. There were a lot of times where I thought the movie was finally gonna end, and then another scene happened and I was like, okay, cool. And so when it finally ended, I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty happy to be done with it, but I still liked the movie. Next up, I watched the Before Trilogy for the very first time. Now, I didn't know too much about this trilogy going into it. The only thing that I knew was that each movie took place 9 years apart from each other. And I knew that it was a romance trilogy. But outside of that, I didn't know what to expect. So Before Sunrise starts with two characters on a train. Ethan Hawke's character asks Julie Delpy's character out. He asks her to leave the train for him just to spend the day with him. It's very spur of the moment, and it's something that you would see in movies, but you love seeing it. So they get off the train, and it's kind of awkward at first because I think they're both kind of thinking in their minds, what have we done? Like, this is gonna be an awkward day. But then slowly the day continues on, and they actually start having a lot of fun together and start liking each other. And they decide in that moment that they're gonna make that night the most romantic night ever for them. And then, a spoiler alert, the movie ends with them separating, and they plan on meeting each other again 6 months later. And so by the time Before Sunrise ended, I wanted more. It just kind of ends with them separating, but you never find out if they meet up together again in 6 months. I was so invested in them and that I just wanted answers. And so I enjoyed this movie, but I was very excited for Before Sunset because I had an idea of who the characters were and I started liking them. And so by the time I got to Before Sunset, I would say I enjoyed it more than Before Sunrise. Because this movie takes place 9 years later. Ethan Hawke's character has written a book about the first movie, and because of that book, he's on a book tour and he runs into Julie Delpy's character in Paris. And this movie is very short, and it really is just about them talking about that night and talking about whether or not they met up with each other 6 months later. And honestly, I don't think it's as romantic as the first movie, but I liked it more than the first movie because it's just kind of like too good to be true. These two people reuniting with each other, being able to see each other again and just walking together again, just talking. I loved it. But my favorite scene of this movie had to be the very ending when Celine just sings to him. I could listen to Celine sing all day. And so yeah, Before Sunset was probably my favorite of the trilogy. But that doesn't discredit Before Midnight at all. This was the third and final entry to the Before trilogy, and I enjoyed this one a lot as well. If I were to rank them, I think this would be my least favorite, but like I said, that doesn't discredit it because I still enjoyed it. Spoiler alerts, Jesse and Celine are together. They have twins. It's 9 years after the second movie, and I think this one was my least favorite because it was the most realistic. And that kind of sounds silly, but I just loved the first and second movie, and to see them in a serious relationship in the third movie, and to see them arguing with each other, it just kind of made me sad, to be completely honest with you. I was just like bummed out. But it still has the same perks of the first two movies, where it's just them walking and talking about life, about each other, and about the future. It was just a great movie, and I think it really depicts what love is. It shows that when you're in these relationships, even though you love the person, you still get in arguments and you still have disagreements. And it was sad to see that on screen, but I think it was very realistic too. So if you're liking this video so far, you should prove it by hitting the like button. And if you're still deciding whether or not you should subscribe, I'll give you a hint, you should do it. The next movie I watched was Failsafe, directed by Sidney Lumet. Now this was only my second movie that I've seen directed by Sidney Lumet, and I loved it. If you guys aren't aware, he directed 12 Angry Men, one of the most iconic, best movies of all time. And so you can imagine that I had pretty high expectations for Failsafe. So basically what happens is America has accidentally ordered their bomb crew to set off an atomic bomb on Moscow. And they have very limited time to contact Moscow, to contact their bomber team and cancel, like, end the mission so that they don't obliterate Moscow. Failsafe definitely has similarities to 12 Angry Men in many scenes. One of the reasons 12 Angry Men works so well is because Sidney Lumet really takes advantage of the camera angles. He puts the camera angle below the characters, above the characters. He really gets you invested in the movie, and because he does that, it builds up the tension and it builds up the suspense in his movies. It makes a movie as simple as 12 Angry Men a very suspenseful movie where you just want to know what happens. But if you take a lot of the good things from 12 Angry Men, just those camera angles that I was talking about, as well as like even the lighting, the shadows on the characters' faces, and you put all that together and then add a crazy plot, then that's Failsafe for you. Sidney Lumet, he has me wanting more and more from his filmography. I will say that the first half hour or so of this movie is really just build up, but once you get past about the 40-minute mark, the rest is just a thrill ride. Henry Fonda is in this movie just like 12 Angry Men, and in this movie he actually plays the President of the United States. It's actually odd, he's not in the movie until about the 40-minute mark. Basically, once Henry Fonda comes in the movie, the rest of the movie from there is just a thrill ride. The whole movie felt like an extended episode of The Twilight Zone, and again, that might be because of the camera angles and the shadowing on the characters' faces. And to make it better, there's a lot of alumni actors from The Twilight Zone in this movie. The movie is absolutely insane. I'm not going to spoil it, but I highly recommend that you guys watch it. It's a newer Criterion release, so if you're looking for movies to pick up at the Criterion sale in July, then I would actually really recommend this one. Now, the last movie I want to talk about is actually technically not a Criterion in the Criterion Collection, but I'm going to kind of cheat because I watched it on the Criterion channel. This movie was also directed by Sidney Lumet, and it stars Rod Steiger. It is The Pawnbroker. The Pawnbroker is one of the saddest movies I have ever seen. I would say it's the saddest movie I've ever seen, but Schindler's List exists, and so I don't know if there's something that can top that. But just take my word, Pawnbroker is a very, very sad movie. It was just one of those movies that as I'm watching it, like out loud to myself, I said, oh my gosh, this movie is like really sad. Rod Steiger gives the best performance I've ever seen from him. Granted, I haven't seen too much of him. I've seen him in the Heat of the Night and Mars Attacks, the Tim Burton movie. And yeah, his performance in The Pawnbroker is definitely the best of all of those, which is kind of ironic because he actually didn't win the Oscar for this movie. He won for In the Heat of the Night. The movie follows Rod Steiger. He is a survivor of the Holocaust. He now owns a pawn shop. He's a pawnbroker, and basically he lost everything from the Holocaust. And so you can just kind of imagine what kind of movie you're getting yourself into when you start it. I would recommend this movie, especially if you're a fan of Rod Steiger and if you're a fan of Sidney Lumet, but definitely just know that it's not an easy watch. There are some scenes that are very like, they scream Sidney Lumet's direction. You can definitely tell you're watching a movie from him. But the rest of the movie is just kind of a slow burner, and you're really just watching the life of Rod Steiger's character. So guys, those are all the movies I watched in May. If you like this series, let me know in the comments below. I just thought it'd be kind of fun to talk about all the Criterions I watch, and let me know what your thoughts are on these movies that I checked out. Yeah, thanks so much for watching, guys. See you in the next video.